Sammy is in Chicago. Sammy, you're on the Larry Elder Show. Thank you so much for calling.
Hey, Larry, I love your show. I just wanted to say God bless you. And radio is one of the few outlets us conservatives still have. Hopefully they won't take that away from us. I just wanted to share a story. I'm new to Chicago. I'm originally from California, and I was living in China for about 7 years as an expat.
Wow.
And I finally decided to come back to the U.S. Yeah, and during the time I've traveled to over 65 countries for business. And I never seen the level of just hatred that I was, one of the reasons why I came back to the USA was because Donald Trump was elected. That really motivated me. That motivated me to come back to the United States, and I was just so happy to come back. And the minute I came back, Larry, I've never experienced this much just hatred and division. And it's so sad to see what's going on. And I was just telling the guy who was screening my call that I was at a small protest just right next to me in Rogers Park. And I saw some police officers, and I just told them, I said, God bless you, and we thank you for your service. And this person, I don't know whether she's a woman or a man, or she had pink hair or he had pink hair, and just started going off at us and saying, calling both of us pigs. And it just...
Still there, Sammy?
Reeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, I've never seen anything like it either. And I lived through the 60s when there were protests in the streets about the Vietnam War. Ronald Reagan, the largest anti-war demonstrations in the history of the world, all over the world. And of course, there were protests against George W. Bush because of the Iraq War. But this, where friends can't talk to friends, family members can't talk to family members, longtime friends are no longer friends, I've not seen anything like this. What has the man done other than give us the best economy we ever had? Lowest unemployment for blacks and for Asians, for Hispanics. Move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem over the objections of many members of his own administration, I found out, because of the assumption that there was going to be a spike in violence. It didn't happen. He promised that he was going to support conservative justices. Any Republican would have made such a promise. So that can't be it. He got us out of the Iran deal, campaigned to get us out of the Iran deal. It was a deal that, at least for a time, even Chuck Schumer opposed. Got us out of the Paris Climate Accord. Even if everything was done in that climate accord, it would not have made any real appreciable impact on so-called climate change. So tell me what this man has done. I know you don't like his style. I know you think he's a bragger. I know you think he's arrogant, talks about himself a lot. I get that. You don't like his style. But in terms of policy, what has the man done? And there was a Gallup poll that asked whether or not Donald Trump was too liberal, too conservative, or just right. The same poll that was asked of George W. Bush, are you too liberal, too conservative, or just right? The percentage of people that thought George W. Bush and Donald Trump are too liberal was almost identical. 1 or 2 points off, maybe. Percentage of people that thought Donald Trump and George W. Bush were just right, almost identical. Percentage of people that thought Donald Trump and thought George W. Bush are too conservative, almost identical. So in terms of too far left, too far right, just right, the American people see George W. Bush and Donald Trump as ideological mirror images. So when I hear people say he's snatched over the Republican Party, he's taking control, they are perceived to be ideologically the same kind of Republican. Now, this stuff about violence and what MLK would have done, because he once said that riots are the language of the unheard. But he also said that ultimately riots are counterproductive and socially destructive.
Let me say, as I've always said, and I will always continue to say, that riots are socially destructive and self-defeating. I'm still convinced that non-violence is the most potent weapon available to oppress people in their struggle for freedom and justice.
He said, even if every black person turned away from nonviolence, I would stand up there and still preach nonviolence because I think it is the most effective way for us to achieve our objectives. Meanwhile, you got Al Sharpton, TV show on MSNBC Hee Haw, in the streets of Ferguson, yelling, no justice, no peace. But he came out of the King movement. Incredible.